So that's why I have to put the monitor on so that they can catch it on the.
There's got to be a way that you can put an output from here to the microphone
It's
jack.
probably burning. Watch. Every week it usually is.
Change does not take place without.
It wasn't my choice. It's already plugged in.
Frederick Douglass, the great abolitionist.
It is my choice, but I
It
didn't.
has to be struggled for.
But I'm fine. He introduced my hour.
We should be very proud that in the last many years,
I'm
we have
fine for
made
that.
great progress in civil
So we're gonna
rights,
be
in women's rights,
on the air
in gay
soon.
rights, in disability rights. But all of us know,
Nancy is
the
phone banking
struggle
already.
continues.
Yeah, how
You're
do
listening to 102.3
How do you even maybe the numbers and stuff?
WHIV
That's pretty.
in New Orleans, Louisiana.
I texted her a little bit, but I never called her.
Get on the air and
Social justice and all wars.
This is Melissa Durazio
Not yet.
from the Dirty Rain
We're gonna talk
Rebels
about
in
this.
New Orleans, and you are listening to 102.3
Labor
WHIV
Day.
LP, New Orleans, a community radio station dedicated to human rights and social justice. And as Howard Zinn once said, how can you have a war on terrorism when war itself is terrorism? And all wars.
Did you know that WHIV is a volunteer-driven community radio station?
Believe that.
We are not a commercial radio station, and all of our hosts and DJs work hard to provide programming dedicated to human rights and social justice. We are able to honor independent voices with your ongoing support. Become a member of WHIV today by setting up recurring donations of any amount you wish per month. That could be $1, $5, $10, or $20, whatever is good for you. Simply go to our fresh-looking website, WHIVFM.org, and click donate. You can also support us by ordering a WHIV t-shirt from our online store. Go to WHIVFM.org and click store. Thank you for your constant support and for listening to 102.3 WHIV LP New Orleans. We are not a radio station with a mission. We are a mission with a radio station. That mission, end all wars.
Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon you. You tuned in to 102.3 WHIV LP New Orleans, your community radio station for social justice and human rights and all wars. And if you just tuned in, you heard and reiterating that we are a community-driven radio station for our community, and we provide this platform for independent voices only with your support. All our hosts and DJs like myself on NOLA Matters Islam in the Crescent City are volunteers, and we do this service for the community because now more than ever we are a radio station dedicated to human rights and social justice, and we need that. And please consider becoming a monthly member of WHIV by setting up a recurring donation of any amount, which could be $1, $100, more, anywhere in between, or just a one-time donation. You can also go to WHIVFM.org and buy some merchandise. We have t-shirts, mugs, and other things. Again, that's either click on donate or store, or you can click on listen live. We are live streaming all over the world. Thank you for your continued support. Remember, we are not a radio station with a mission. We are a mission with a radio station. And I am Yanez on NOLA Matters Islam in the Crescent City. Was a lot of things going on in the last couple of weeks, but I want to start with some announcements. Always remember that preventing HIV is easy. Get PrEP. You can get free HIV testing at any Access Health Louisiana location. Plus, same-day primary care appointments are always available. Of course, I'm talking about the greater New Orleans area. If you're listening somewhere else in the world, find out what locally is available for you. Access has a new location in downtown New Orleans at the Pythian Building, where individuals may be seen for diagnosis and treatment of HIV, STIs, and PrEP. Plus, all Access Health Louisiana patients qualify for discounted medications through their pharmacy. For more information, you can go to la.org. That's Access Health. That's accesshealthla.org. And before I share some more announcements, I should share the theme of the day, but we start with the Muslim Minute. So if you've been tuning in before to NOLA Matters Islam in the Crescent City, you know that we begin with the Muslim Minute, which is where I share in translation a little bit of the Holy Quran and also of the Hadith of the Prophet, peace be upon him, and usually will inform us of what we're going to talk about that day. So from the Quran, this is from Surah 22, Ayah 46, it is not the eyes that are blind, but the hearts. And from the Hadith of the Prophet, peace be upon him, whoever follows a path in the pursuit of knowledge, Allah will make easy for him a path to paradise. I love that one. I don't think I've shared that one enough. And so that pretty much could be almost any show, Jeffrey. It's not the eyes that are blind, but the hearts.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to introduce our special guest, who's also a friend, and he's been on the show before, Jeffrey Barrois. Assalamu alaikum.
Hi, thanks for having me back.
You are always welcome, and thank you for being here. You're still in the school year.
Oh yes, I am.
I could feel it. I could hear it in your voice. Let me tell you a little bit about Jeffrey. If you don't know him, if you live in New Orleans and you've been out there rallying for things that are good and related to not just education but social justice, you may have met him before. He is a staff member with Jefferson Parish Schools. He is an active member of Jefferson Federation of Teachers. He actually ran for president of Jefferson Federation of Teachers.
I didn't win.
Most people don't win.
Right.
Absolutely, most people that you ran. This is fabulous, and you only did it once, right? You only ran once.
Once, yeah.
Yeah. So we hope this is going to continue to be a goal.
We'll see.
Yeah, we'll work on that. And he is also a member of the Democratic Socialists of America, where he's been very active in the past. And he is, like I said, he's a local activist in matters that are about social justice. You may see him standing up for what he believes in. And he's also a friend. So I didn't have to read your bio. Most people
know from memory.
Yeah, not from memory. And so I probably missed stuff because this is just what I know. But you're a humble guy, and so I think that it's okay that you, that I may have missed some things, but you can add
You
it.
did great. I teach at Jefferson Parish, and that's mostly who I am.
Yeah. And what do you teach currently?
I teach 4th and 5th grade special education at a regular, like a public school. Jefferson Parish, for people listening, we do still have mostly public schools, but that, and we're going to talk a little bit about that later, is under threat in a lot of ways. There are people who are interested in making them into charter schools, much like has been done in Orleans Parish, and I mean, we've all heard, horror stories, despite the fact they'll say, oh, scores are higher and graduation levels are better or whatever. There are ways that they can kind of fudge through those numbers. Anyway, they're sort of done. They've finished privatizing. They've charterized every school in New Orleans at this point, and now they're moving on us.
So let me preface that, because that's a very important conversation that we need to have. So one thing that I want to definitely, we need to talk about this charter school move.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to say that I personally met the superintendent of Jefferson Parish, who's a new superintendent, new to our community from, I don't know, where is he from, like Charles?
He was in DeSoto Parish. His name is Cade Brumley. He's a very interesting fellow. Let's put it that way.
And he did all the photo ops with the Muslim community. We met him, and he was put all pictures in the Muslim community. He's tried to work with language access. He's tried to work with ESL. So we kind of believe that his leadership is actually going to make a difference and improve the school system. But all of a sudden, what happened chartering?
So that's something that's
no?
I don't know. He's not like the direct person behind it. There is he made a recommendation at the last school board meeting. The school board usually meets on Wednesdays, I believe. But at the last school board meeting, he made a recommendation to close 3 schools. One of them was Strealy Elementary in Algiers. The other one was Live Oak, and one more was Miller Wall, where my wife actually taught in Marrero for a little while. She no longer teaches there, but she has obviously a connection to the
Oh,
school.
wait, I want to send a shout out to him.
Shout out to Kimberly. Love you.
So her school was affected?
Not her current school, the school that she was at several years ago, but still, the school that she taught at for several years, closing down, and that means something. Anyway, and I actually knew some folks that taught over there.
Well, it means that you have a direct experience with it, and that yeah.
Correct, and also. So what ended up happening is a couple of charter schools, one called Smothers Academy, ended up taking over the Miller Wall. They're gonna take over that by Marrero. I'm not going to comment on their sort of protector or anything like that. Generally speaking, charter schools redirect public money into privatized hands, and they're not publicly accountable in the same way that a public school board is. They have their own boards, and from the labor side of it, they can essentially define their school of networks of schools as their own bargaining unit. So Jefferson Parish Teachers, which is my union, has, they cover the entire parish of Jefferson, at least the public schools, not the charter ones. And I might be getting some of this wrong, but the way I understand it as a non-expert is that the bargaining unit of that, the charter school has to get their own contract with that entity. So the teachers at that school would have to go through the process of getting 50% of their members plus one to sign union cards. And then after that, they would have to, present it to the board. Then they would most likely have to hold a vote. And then that would be the way that they would be recognized as a union at that school level only.
So the JFT would be involved?
They haven't, so they could be, but I have not, and I'm not speaking for, the staff or the leadership or anything like that. I haven't seen any action on that. And and I'm not making a judgment on that one way or the other either. One of the ways that would have to sort of happen, like that would have to be happening before resources would be devoted to it, in a lot of ways. And to get beyond also the teacher union organizing side, because that's where the source of teacher power comes from, is the fact that they can act collectively. But also when you close these schools, and I didn't even get into all of it as well, but
so have they actually declared some of these schools charter schools for next year?
So one of the ones, the Miller Wall, as I mentioned, with one of the ones that we're closing, they're making that into a school called Smothers Academy, which they have a mission of educating, young boys. It's a purely boys' school, which I find to be interesting for public schools as well. But I'm not super familiar with their mission or whatever. One of the other schools that they are actually closing down, which is not included in those initial three, is one that is being transferred, like the hand of it is being transferred from Jefferson Parish Schools to Ochsner. Partially.
Ochsner?
Ochsner, the hospital.
Okay, Ochsner is an institution that's
correct.
Declared itself a nonprofit.
It's a nonprofit foundation, correct?
Foundation. So I'm not going to speak on that because I'm not prepared to.
Mm-hmm.
And they pretty much have privatized healthcare all over the Greater New Orleans region.
Correct.
They do. I do know that they offer financial assistance because of being a foundation to those who may not be able to pay. And I have seen that to be true. So I don't want to speak on them, but I do think it's very interesting. Very interesting how does a huge foundation basically runs all of healthcare, but even though it's a nonprofit foundation, it started off as a
private corporation, correct? And nonprofit foundations are nonprofit foundations are private as well.
And they want to run a school.
Board did at the last school board meeting when they closed these three schools, and once again, this is as I understand it, and I mean, I don't think I'm getting this totally wrong, but I've talked a lot about it with folks. I've read on the issue. I'm not an expert. I'm just a regular teacher. But the way that they're sort of organizing it is they're going to be the part of the contract of the school changing hands from Jefferson Parish schools to the Oscar Foundation is that they will be required to spend $10 million to rebuild the school. And that's coming out of Oscar's pocket.
Are we talking about infrastructure rebuilding?
Like rebuilding it like from the ground up, like replacing the buildings and things like that.
We're still talking infrastructure. We're not
Correct.
talking actually about, because you can educate,
Mhm.
Sitting on a beach. Basically, in some countries they educate
Sure,
under trees.
Some private schools
So-
don't have buildings. Some private schools just have, internet, and they have,
Right.
private,
course.
like charter schools that are run purely online, which is that is some snake oil.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not advocating that we educate our children outdoors. Whatever works for your family is fine. But what I'm saying is that when you're talking about rebuilding and infrastructure, we're talking about the actual, buildings themselves, not the way that subject matter gets taught and what gets taught.
No, they're physically
and
rebuilding it.
etc. Yeah, okay, so that makes sense.
And the management of the school is going to be in partnership with Canada Discovery Charter School, which I'm not a fan of Canada Discovery Charter Schools. They have a lot of power in Jefferson Parish, especially within the business community over there.
Well, all charter schools
Mhm.
have to have ties with the business community
Correct.
and with government, because basically what it is
It's a contract.
It's a neoliberal way to deal in a capitalist society with privatizing the last of those things that are public.
Right. It's
We
saying that.
privatized-
Sorry.
No, it's okay. How many things have we privatized? Even healthcare.
Since the 70s.
So we're now. I think the one of education is probably the last bastion of things that need to be privatized. That there's, we say that it's public, but really it's not. It's not in the hands of.
It's decreasingly being public.
And I think the last thing, don't underestimate how many things that they could take away from the public and privatize, because they gave Domino's Pizza the ability to help save our streets.
They contracted out street repairs to a pizza company, correct?
Exactly. So I never underestimate how that can function. But when speaking about education, this is important. This is our children. This is the future, and it is our money, and it is now being given to corporate hands to run what we're called. I mean, the way that they phrase it, it makes it seem like, well, there are contracts and there's time limits, and it's okay, it's a partnership, and they're going to be we're going to follow this process to make sure that. But we've seen what happens nationally. It really does not. It does really not do much to raise the level of those that need it the most.
Correct. And sort of like so neoliberalism, you mentioned that word earlier, and that's a word that is used a lot, and I believe you're using it correctly here, which is based on, so the entire thing with that is that it's based on an ideological framework, which means which thinks that, necessarily speaking, as a very baseline issue, if something is run by the government, it is worse than something that is run by something private. And that is the default assumption that goes into the entire ideology, correct? Is that correct in how you understand it?
Well, it's basically privatizing everything that's
Correct.
That's public.
So,
right?
so that's the next step, is because everything that's private is necessarily better than something that's public, then the action item would be, well, privatize everything. Why wouldn't you?
Well, there's also the assumption that businesses and those people who have made money know how to manage our public money better than the public themselves.
Exactly.
Because it's a very capitalist thought. It's this idea that, those that have will continue to have, and they will continue to decide what everybody else has, all the way down to our healthcare, education, everything.
And also based in that assumption, couched in it, is not that they will. It's not that they will govern or they will control things for themselves. It's that they will control things for all, based in all of that assumptions. And
for those people who who really haven't had these conversations about how do these policies affect us directly, or may not be familiar with the terms, such as neoliberalism, and you may connect it to being liberal, for example. Now, these terms are not related, and the point is that if your school becomes a charter, the school your child goes to becomes a charter school, you should ask yourself a question like, okay, so why is it changing? Is it just changing names? What's
or
going
will
on
my
here?
child even be able to go to this school?
Because what we see happens with charter school around the nation and in Orleans Parish, and again, I don't know about every single charter school, but in general, from my understanding, and I studied No Child Left Behind extensively until they changed the entire
It's still bad.
federal policy. But anyway, so what you have to ask yourself is, they're going to tell you the mission and the goals, and we're going to improve education, we're bringing in more money, but a lot of them are tied to 5 year goals. This is my understanding. A lot of them are tied to 5 year goals. So if by like 5 years they've messed it up, then there's like fines, and you can't be a charter anymore.
They
There's
can lose
different,
their charter,
right?
correct.
Right. So this is in general what the charter system looks like around the country, and about 5 years to see if it works, which
And
sounds
largely in urban areas.
Which sounds like, okay, it's reasonable. We have 5 years to let an enterprise or a business take foundation, take hold to see if it makes whatever money, or in this case, if it makes some kind of progress.
The product is test scores, which is also a racket.
Here's the thing, 5 years in a child's life. Your child is 7? 5 years?
Then they're 12, correct, yeah.
5 years? This is the foundational years for your child. Your child's an experiment. Your child is an experiment in capitalism. And it's very dangerous. You may look out, it may work out, but the truth is that if you can afford a private school education, you can afford it already. And if you can't, the investment needs to be there for you, and the investment needs to come from the people. It needs to be a push from the government. It needs to be something we invest in as a society, something that we say everybody is deserved. Charter schools is hit or miss. And usually they're out, oh, well, if that doesn't work out, then we'll close it.
Right,
This is
that's great too. Closing schools is awesome, right?
Yeah, but it's not just closing. It's if it doesn't work out, then what do you mean it doesn't work out? This is not how, this is our children. So the whole idea of charter schools, it didn't work after Hurricane Katrina in Orleans Parish. We know that, because if it had worked, we would see, right now there's the People's Assembly for Institute, the People's Assembly. I'm getting the two organizations in my mind all mixed up, but the People's Assembly has highlighted a call to an issue that's being ignored in Orleans Parish. I'm not going to talk about it a lot, but there is money to fix. There's lead in the water in some Orleans schools.
Right, just like Flint, Michigan.
And see, we don't realize that these things need to be addressed immediately.
Correct.
Why do we need to question where does the money come from? Is this an issue? This is a moral issue. We already know this is poison, and especially poison for children. So you should not debate this or wait for it or look for the money. It's like, go ahead and deal with this immediately.
Well, I think in addition to it being a moral issue, it's also a material issue. So if there's a school that is in an affluent area, or if a school like Lusher Elementary or Lusher Charter School, it's all the grade levels. They'll never, ever, ever, ever have to worry about getting lead in their water.
I would have been on the headline news.
Well, it'll never happen, because they are run by Tulane, correct? And many of its seats go to people who work at Tulane. It's a well-funded institution. It is a charter. Yeah, it's in New Orleans Parish. It's a charter, but that institution will never ever have lead in their water, because the people who the people who control it and the people whose kids go to that school have the financial means to make it so that nobody would dare to let that happen.
So these educational decisions and these policies are being motivated by business and corporate interests. So what is in the interest of, how much money do we have to spend if the kids could just bring water from home? I don't know what they think. I don't know what they think. Why do they sit on things like this?
Exposure to exposure to water. You don't have to drink it. If you're near lead, you're exposed to lead.
So I want you really gave us more information than I expected because I wanted to share a whole bunch of other stuff. But that's good. I'm really,
Fine.
really happy about it.
I wasn't even done with Usher. I wasn't even done with Usher yet.
I want you talking about it, but I also want people to keep in mind that if they were, and you were at the Solidarity event, which was honoring the victims of the New Zealand terrorist attack, and as a community, and standing together in solidarity against Islamophobia and xenophobia. But we can add to, it's not just xenophobia, we can add to that it's the most marginalized of our communities that always suffer first. And that's not just brown people, which many people believe Muslims are only brown people and black people, but it is actually our African American children in this city, and their education is, they're not getting the quality education that they deserve because in New Orleans specifically, there's a lot of private schools, and a lot of people that can afford private schools will put their children in private school, which leaves public schools in a difficult position because there's not a lot of support from a lot of families to fund it, to support it, to fight for it at the government level because they don't care.
Correct.
And now if they can, kind of put their kids in a charter school and get their kids in there, then
or even
why they can fight for other schools in the urban areas, like you said.
Or even elite public schools, which you have to test into. There's an economic curve to that as well, because one of the determining factors of where you would score on a test is one of the core things for that is your socioeconomic status.
So one of the things that I had mentioned when I introduced you was that you ran for the Jefferson Federation of Teachers president, but we need to make this connection between when we talked in the Solidarity gathering, we talked about connecting faith through good deeds and faith in actions and making social change that affects us all. And being involved at the school level is very important. Just tell us, how can an average parent who's probably never been to a PTO meeting, how can an average parent learn more about what's going on in their school and start to become active in their child's life?
Well, one thing I would say would be to talk with other parents and teachers just as a one-on-one about what is going on in education not necessarily what's going on in your classroom, what you're teaching right now, but what is going on in education in a general sense. What do you see about what's happening, at your job and where my child goes to school and their learning conditions, because that's where the synthesis of learning conditions and working conditions for education workers, not just teachers either, teachers, paraeducators, social workers, custodials, monitors, it's all the way down the line, bus drivers, where those two things collide is sort of where this natural agreement potentially could come from. So getting on the same page with teachers and with other parents and having them be organized together is step one. It's people versus profits, or people. I guess these are nonprofit institutions, so people versus capital, people versus.
That's what it boils down to. It's you invest in society. You don't make money off of society.
Correct. Well, we have to invest not necessarily our money because we don't have it. We have to invest our physical labor and our energy and our time and our money. And the little money we have, we have to use it as a collective group. We have to use that to facilitate this sort of thing. I'm talking inside of JFT. I'm talking about and the other teachers union too. Shout out to UTNO. Shout out to all the LAE local affiliates as well. We need to be all on the same page on a united front because these business communities, or whatever you want to call them, these school privatizers, the school deform movement, as opposed to school reform.
Led by
Betsy DeVos and Eli Broad and
billionaires.
What was Steve Jobs's?
Her job is to destroy public schools.
Correct, and she's done it in Michigan, where she came from.
She was chosen because she has a record of privatizing schools and of devaluing certain schools over others. And she's been in the news recently for taking funds away from the Special Olympics.
Yeah.
So she's quite.
That was.
I have no words right now that I can use on the air for.
Literally that afternoon yesterday, get this, I was talking to a parent of a former student of mine. And the parent shows me pictures of her child with her little ribbons from the Special Olympics. And when I come home, I see on the news, or actually I look at my phone. Nobody looks at TV anymore. At least I don't. I look at my phone and I see, well, they're defunding the Special Olympics. I'm like, this is just absolutely horrible.
Yeah, because
I'm very angry right now.
They're trying to reach the depths of the lows. This is my personal opinion, but just when you think they reach them, they just dig, they dig.
And
when they reach the bottom of the pit, they have like a,
well, it's
could go under it, and they just keep digging.
It's like almost like that money is not doing anything for anybody because it doesn't produce any material goods for those people. For the people who are making the decisions, not for the children. For the children and the people who are involved with special Olympics, it has tremendous benefit.
I'm not going to purposefully interrupt you. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'm going to do some station identification if you just tuned in. This is Jenny Yanez on NOLA Matters, Islam in the Crescent City on WHIV LP New Orleans, 102.3 FM, your community radio station for social justice and human rights and all wars. I neglected to mention on top of the hour, we're also airing on 12:30 a.m. on WBOK. And I didn't mention we're live streaming everywhere around the world on WHIV. fm.org. You can listen live, and you can also go to the merchandise store or to donate. If you go to the merchandise store, you can buy a t-shirt, mug, anything you can to support us. And of course, you can donate anything from $1 a month to anything you want to, or make a one-time donation. We do appreciate our continuing membership and our growing membership. And as you know, we're a community radio station that provides platforms for individual voices with your support. All our hosts and DJs, including myself, are volunteers. We do this as a service for the community because now more than ever, we need a radio station dedicated to human rights and social justice. Thank you for your continued support. Remember, we're not a radio station with a mission. We are a mission with a radio station and all wars. We're here with my good friend Jeffrey Barrois, and he's a teacher and also at the Jefferson Parish schools, and he is also an active member of Jefferson Federation of Teachers and running for president of JFT.
Oh, I'm not anymore. I have that, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought you were saying, I was like, no, it's over with.
Ran for, but some people run over like Hillary Clinton.
I don't have that kind of, I'm not that kind of a long distance runner.
But you are active in trying to make change in the
Absolutely.
schools, and you're educating us right now to not underestimate yourself. Also, he is a member of Democratic Socialists of America, so we may be talking a little bit of brain. But before we do that, I just wanted to share, take a break for a second. Yesterday was Muslim Women's Day, and that was, let me see, wanted to share it with y'all. So it was a Muslim magazine, or Muslim ladies, not ladies, young girls. I think it was Muslim Girl who started it. And I will double check on that to make sure that's correct. So Muslim Women's Day was yesterday, March, what day was yesterday?
The 27th. I just checked on my phone.
When you start talking like this, it's like you realize nobody's listening to this.
What are days?
And so I wanted to share some songs from a Muslim woman who was considered some protest songs. 2017, one of the best protest songs in 2017 was from Mona Haydar. So I wanted to break up our conversation just a minute, and before we continue talking, and share Mona Haydar with you. Let's see. You heard her before, Jeffrey?
I have not.
There we go. Play another song. Take your time.
We're doing good. I think we come back to the Oscar thing though, just because half of the seats in the
You played songs to get
more education.
All around the world, love women every shade and be so regulated. All around the world, love women every shade and so even if you hate it, I still rap my hijab, rap my hijab, rap my hijab, rap my hijab. Keep swaying my hijab, keep swaying my hijab, swaying my hijab, swaying my hijab. Me and my hijabi ladies, we was born in the 80s, so pretty like the Euphrates and party like some Kuwaitis, deeper than some diplomas, current like some hot yoga, taking back the misnomers and teleporting through trauma, teleporting through trauma, teleporting through trauma. I've been stacking my karma, Nefertiti, no drama, make a feminist planet, woman haters get banished, covering up her nuts, don't ever take us for granted. All around the world, love women every shade and be so regulated. All around the world, love women every shade and so even if you hate it, I still rap my hijab, rap my hijab, rap my hijab, rap my hijab. Keep swaying my hijab, keep swaying my hijab, swaying my hijab, swaying my hijab. I still rap my hijab, rap my hijab, rap my hijab, rap my hijab. Keep swaying my hijab, keep swaying my hijab, swaying my hijab, swaying. You're just getting from my sisters, these masters, these hippies, these pussies, these Sufis, these buddies, these sunnies, these shorties, feminists, Somalis, the men box, these sweeties,
I wanted to circle back to the charter and to the Oscar thing really quick, because the way that it's organized is that 50% of the seats in that school, and what was formerly the alternative school, John Martin, will be available only to Oscar employees. 30%.
You need to merchandise.
Yeah, that's why I want to go back. 30% will be for candidates who will be had the candidate discovery process, and then the other like 20% will be for Shrewsbury neighborhood people, which is like it's the opposite of a neighborhood school, but it's part of the fucking Oscar benefits package. Sorry, I'm trying to say fucking on the air, but I have heard this song.
You know you were on Facebook Live, which is okay. You're not on the air.
Yeah, what's the word?
You're not on the air though. Which is different sensors.
Yeah. They censor. They don't censor. They keep Nazi on.
We'll get on there in a second now. So that was Mona Haydar with Wrap My Hijab, because yesterday was Muslim Women's Day, and that was the 2017, one of the protest songs for 2017. There's a couple other songs I want to play from her, just kind of to, it's kind of the mood. And just give a chance for Jeffrey and I to catch up and to close off the show. And we're going to make some announcements, because we said faith in action. So there's some community meetings coming up, and we want you to be there, to be present, to make a difference, to make social change. We want you to keep praying. That's absolutely imperative if that is your faith-based calling. But we need you to take that faith and have it transformed, because we've been making such very, very, gentle asks, and the Islamophobia is growing all over the West. Xenophobic kind of extremism is taking hold, and so whatever inspires y'all. So last week we had Imam Yasser Usmani on the air. He read Quran, and I tried to really tried to touch on that the faith part of the follow-up to the Solidarity Gathering. Today I want to touch on what are some things we can do for action, and I'm glad my friend Jeffrey's here. So again, like I said, yesterday was Muslim Women's Day, and I am playing some Mona Haydar.
Hi, Facebook Live. Sorry for cursing.
I didn't know you were cursing.
Okay.
I didn't hear it clearly.
Okay.
I didn't hear it. This is one of my favorites. You heard it? Listen to the lyrics. It's about colonization, being a colonized peoples, and the objectification of Muslim women.
It's the same format.
Same performance.
What's your name?
Mona Haydar.
We them barbarians, beautiful and scaring them, earth shaking, rattling, we wild out loud again. We them barbarians, Feminine invading that
Heard it before?
beautiful
Lyrics
barbarian.
are pretty powerful.
Say it again. Beautiful barbarian. Say it again. Beautiful barbarian. These before now, they wanna be wearing my skin. We don't let them in. We're beautiful barbarians. Let me get back. I remember days on these big lips. Oh, they used to hate. Now they have lip.
Let's move on.
So did you know that about the community meetings that coalition with AFT and LEA and like a school board coalition and whatever? They're trying to push for the governor's like pay raise. Well, the Bessie board already approved it, but what ended up happening is JFT, LFT in the state level, and a bunch of these other statewide organizations, coalitions. I know. I just want to let you know, because I'm probably one time explaining this, but and the idea is they're holding these town halls to sort of like talk to elected officials and attempt to pressure them into supporting this finance. Well, you know what Jim Harvey is on the Bessie board? He's a business from Cyprus, right? He's a lawyer now, a CPA now, or a lawyer or whatever. And from diapers, he was a rich guy. When somebody asked if any of the people at the panel would support CBC to get $3,000 raise instead of $1,000 raise, that's what compared it to a spoiled child wanting a whole gallon of ice cream. Maria got her own video. Like, I was like, I actually raised my hand. I raised my Yeah, I was so mad, and I was sitting in the front row.
Luxury sports car.
This guy, his dad and his uncle sold a radio phone for $400 million. Yeah, I get so mad at these people. I'm sorry, I didn't have to do it. But I'll think I'll listen to the link of it.
I'm going to play one more song. We're going to talk about culture. And then I'm going to have some community. One more song.
Decolonize this mind. Decolonize.
Show this to kids. She might like them.
Okay. So you have like a YouTube page or Spotify or? Yeah.
I'm going to close out with a public service announcement.
Cool.
Again, this is Mona Hader, and I am going to play, that was beautiful, I think it's called Barbarian, just Barbarian. And the first one was Wrap My Hijab. Now this one is called, I think it's called Dog. So this is a controversial song, and for those of you who are Muslim, listen closely to the lyrics. For those of you who are women, especially Muslim women, who are on social media, this is going to touch a chord. It's going to touch a chord because it is this cognitive dissonance of how we are the paradigms of virtue, and that we are treated well by most men in the Muslim world. But there's this, the dissonance is in, we are looked upon as like such very, very, very chaste women, and that's fine. But at the same time, some of these men that we look up to will be up on our, where the song says, in the DM.
Mm-hmm.
And people that are highly admirable in our communities, people that are very, very to be respected, well then, when nobody else is looking, get in and try to hear the song. Here, it's a public service announcement and catharsis for some women who are very active on the internet. I ain't saying I'm talking about me, huh? But I need y'all to hear this. You need to hear this.
If you think this song is about you, I don't know what to tell you. Shit's on the DM, shit's in my DM. Begging me to shake it on my DM in the PM. Shit's on the DM, shit's in my DM. Riding in the alley like a Saudi out of van. A teacher, a guru, or you just some dude. Then not on the hustle, but you just a produce. Boy, you ain't got no truth. Boy, you drop a oku. Too little for your ego, and I cannot give you no boost. Say my voice is calm, cause you getting turned on. Boy, you might need put on. Boy, you need to turn down. Got my full hood on. Get my full hood on. Something but a thought I got my full hood on. See them thirsty CDs and their CDs. Cookie turns and the prayer beats. I'm rocking to Twitter. Insta, hear those howls. When the sun sets, trying to hunt me down. You can see my spirit. You're the dog in me. You can see my glow. He's a dog. 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 Oh, you need to be her. Come, you gotta rest. Every nerve in his cookie. He's a dog. 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 Not a yummy cookie. The looky. I am not a rookie. Better watch out for a dookie. Midtime. Spiritually violent, deviant but hiding. You can't tell enlightenment, laugh at your entitlement. They know on women, only dudes. Excuse me, really? Rude. Emotional terrorist, you can get your errors, but you need a therapist. Boy, you need an exorcist. Throwing up them gins and ghosts.
No fly list, coast to coast.
Baby, habity, pretty, please, but you work at Chuck E. Cheese. You get grades, they don't age. Rabbit cradles, middle age. You can see my spirit.
Hopefully they'll have a new announcement by next week, but I don't want to do it on air. But I'm trying to get an author of a book wrote about the teacher strikes across the country from last year. He wrote a book about it. We're going to do a book event, hopefully with him. But I don't have a place right now. Well, I would like it to be also a read and then go again. Yeah, I know. Review. Sorry, interview.
Oh my God, you need God.
All right, so a little shout out to Mona Haydar. That was the song Dog, talking about it, really the disrespect of some people to look at women as in the public sphere they are respected, but then privately they're still being they're still being kind of objectified and disrespected in these private spaces. And I think that when we are talking about faith and action, I'm talking about this. You need to be transformed, and there's we need to stand up in our uncomfortable personal spaces, and so that we can actually shine this light on what needs to be done.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of pain that's being imposed on Muslims in the world with this homophobia. And again, we're still suffering by the loss of the 51 lives in New Zealand, but it's going to happen again and again. Shootings, and they try to burn down a mosque, and there have been signs in Oklahoma saying Muslims don't belong here, and even in Canada, they are now trying to ban the hijab in public schools.
And
But
remember,
I didn't bring that up, Jeffrey, because I know we have so much to talk about, and you're a teacher, so that's the conversation also. I would love to know your opinion on it. But we had cut off with Oshner charterizing. We're talking about chartering public schools in Jefferson Parish, which is a fairly new thing because we know that public schools in Orleans had chartered, and all around the country as this, last bastion of neoliberalism is to take away education, to privatize education.
privatize all public services.
That's right. We've already privatized healthcare. We've privatized so many things, but now I was kind of proud of Jefferson Parish, how they had, how they were really, didn't matter where you lived, you could kind of rely that the school was united with one vision and one board, and that they were going to try to, fund them and grow them in an equitable way. But now if they start chartering, now they're cutting the best pieces of the pie for some people, right? So tell me about the
So you could get into the history of Jefferson Parish School Board since about 2010, but that would be a whole another hour. Real quick before
you're welcome to come back for that. Let's put a bookmark on it. But
okay, thank you. You see, that's how I get to the invites is by and say, oh, that's another story for another hour. Anyway, before we move on, I did want to say that in addition to all those horrible things that are happening in the public square, there was also those public, like these municipal institutions that had the picture of Ilhan Omar with that horrible message. By the way, Ilhan Omar rules, and she was posting about forgiving student debt today, which please, let's do that. Anyway,
thank you.
$1.5 trillion. That's a lot of money that people have to do to even have a chance to not get a good job. Anyway, so Oshner. The last thing I wanted to say on that was the construction of the school will be co-managed with, or be managed by Kenner Discovery, which is a charter school in Jefferson Parish. And critically in this, half of the seats in the school, first off, not all of them will go into the Shrewsbury community where the school is located. They are closing an alternative school called John Martin, which was the school that essentially, if you were not, if you were expelled from a public school for, behaviors or, actions.
Like for truancy?
Potentially truancy, or like if you were, so one of the students, like a younger one, a first grader that I know this year got sent from my school there for, fighting and, hitting teachers and things like that. And I don't want to, get too much into the complicatedness of that because it's a complicated thing as well. But this school will be closing. The students at the alternative school will have to go across the river to Algiers, which is not close. It's about 40-minute drive.
No, that's
not maybe not 40, maybe 25 or so. And half of those students that will be at the new school they're going to call it John Oshner or something. They're gonna half of the seats in that school will be reserved for children of employees of Oshner.
How do you reserve seats for? How do you do that?
They can just say these are blocked off and given. These seats are essentially going to be a part of a benefits package for Oshner employees.
I think we need to come back. I think you need to come back. But tell me about the community meetings because we're running short on time. Tell me about the meetings that you are open to people. Okay,
so they're only 20% of those schools are going to be for the Shrewsbury community. Anyway, two things.
So basically, it's kind of a private school, but with public money.
Correct. It's very specifically kind of private school, a public school.
And you need to find out if your child, if your money and your child is going to a school like that, and then probably will be actions or some kind of response to this because
Hopefully.
It's fairly new.
Yeah, I was at the school board meeting saying they're selling our kids, and nobody said it. Oh, there were speakers, but it wasn't really a big deal. They were able to do it. So, community announcements.
Yes, please.
I have two. Democratic Socialists of America. We're a working class organization designed to get economic democracy in our society. We have a general meeting on August 2nd at 6:30 at the Corpus Christi Church.
Did you say August?
Did I say August?
You said August.
I meant to say April. I would not be announcing something that far out, I don't think.
I would not remember something.
Yeah, April 2nd. It's at the community center at the Corpus Christi Church on St. Bernard Highway, 2022 St. Bernard Avenue. We meet there every other month, usually on the first Monday or Tuesday. We also have we have a brake light clinic coming on up on April 6th. I wanted to highlight that we have a workplace organizing 101. Our labor standing committee, of which I'm one of the co-chairs, is holding a training essentially to teach people ways to organize in your workplace. And we're also gonna have a crawfish boil. So it's gonna
What day is that?
That's gonna be April 14th. So mark your calendars, folks.
Where is it?
It's going to be at one of our co-chairs' houses. Just go to DSA, DSANewOrleans.org.
DSA for Democratic Socialism, or
Yes.
DSA?
DSANewOrleans.org/events. And we will have that location posted, and also check out our social media at DSA New Orleans and check us out on Facebook, all that stuff.
I heard two things.
Mhm.
Organizing, profit.
Yeah, two good things.
That's it. That's all I need to know. Knowing the day is useful because then I'll miss it. Yeah, so that
April
that's
14th.
it. You had me at organizing, but the crawfish is what's really gonna seal the deal there.
We have a huge April month. If you want to come to some DSA New Orleans stuff, now's the time.
There's a lot, and DSA have they as mission statement. Y'all are supporting Bernie's candidacy.
We're locally. So the national organization has done a resolution to do a Bernie endorsement, Bernie Sanders for president 2020. We're still debating how we're going to deal with that on the local level. So even if we do, as a DSA New Orleans, endorse Bernie Sanders, we are still defining what that will look like, and how we'll engage with other organizations who are doing it as well. That can get really complicated really fast. But
Yeah, so and that's not fair because you weren't prepared to talk about the endorsement. But I don't care how many people actually throw their hats right now. I think I can openly say personally that that's where I'm gonna go.
He's pretty good.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna make some real quick announcements. I didn't know we're gonna be so short on time, but these are for specifically the Muslim community, but everybody is welcome. The Jefferson Muslim Association wants to invite to several things. March 29 after Maghrib prayer. There's a youth halaqah called The Reality of Dreams in Islam. Saturday, March 30th after Asr prayer at Dar es Salaam, which is our community hall in Kenner. There's a Sister Spring banquet. And there's tickets were for sale beforehand, but I think that you can still come at the door. On Sunday, March 31st, after Dhuhr prayer at Dar es Salaam, there's a workshop called Initial Parenting, How to Raise Resilient Children. Sunday, after Isha prayer at Abu Bakr Mosque, there's a workshop on contemporary financial issues. Sunday, April 7, after Dhuhr at Abu Bakr Mosque, workshop about understanding special education rights and services.
Really?
There's a lot going on. Yes. Yeah.
Understanding special education rights and services. That is something that if you know anyone or who has children who have an IEP, who have special needs, or even a 504 accommodations, or you think might qualify, it is critical that you know your rights.
Let me add a couple more announcements before we're out of time. Chiquitas, which we've had the founder of Chiquitas here, Melissa Alba. Chiquitas is also having a Daughters of Immigrants luncheon with a focus on mental health, and that's this Saturday, March 30th at Propeller Incubator, and at 1:30. So for information about the mosque events, you can go to my page, NOLA Matters Islam in the Crescent City on Facebook, and I will message you, the links to all those events. Chiquitas also is, I don't know what their social media presence is, but I'm telling y'all, March 30th, 1:30 incubator. If you don't know where the incubator is and you're in the Greater New Orleans area, you need to know. There's also the IWO International, the women's organization. They're having a meeting as well on Saturday morning. Check them out. And Sister District NOLA, this is a message from Kenny Francis. As you all know, Louisiana has elections for state senators and representatives, as well as governor in 2019. These races are super important and have a lot of consequences. These officials spend our tax dollars and create all state laws. They're even more significant as we prepare for redistricting in 2021. So they have an event. Let me say the real quick, 11 to 2 p.m. And oh my God, when is that event? Kenny, Sister District NOLA is having an event. I believe it is. Go say what you're going to say because we have to close out.
So I just wanted to announce that if I'm not mistaken, Bessie Board, the state level school board, is also up for election this year. And we really need to get some of these bad people off and get some good people on. Check out Erase the Board and Step Up Louisiana they have a parents union developing and things like that as well.
So Kenny Francis, as I mentioned, Sister District NOLA, Project NOLA, and learning about the state senators and representatives in the Louisiana elections coming up. That's April 7th, Sunday, April 7th. So I still have next week to announce that. I probably missed some announcements, y'all. So hopefully they're not this weekend. Trying to see, this one more announcement that I promised, and it's the Autism Walk. The Autism Walk starts at 8 a.m. on April 6th, 8 a.m. on April 6th at the UNO Lakefront. So that's another one that I promised to get the word out there. Sorry if I missed your event this weekend. There's no shortage of things for us to do, to organize around, to support causes, to learn more about causes, to meet people, to get outside. It's beautiful.
It's so beautiful.
It's too
outside.
hot in here today.
I wish we could record outside.
Okay, so thank you for Jeffrey. Thank you so much once again for coming in.
It's my pleasure.
Really, you exceeded my expectations. I'll drive home thinking, what?
I can send you some stuff, and you can maybe post it on your website, on your Facebook, and Twitter, and social media if you'd like as well.
Yes, please. I didn't expect to learn this much on this hour. Not because I underestimate you, but because I thought you was preaching to the choir. But you know, the choir keeps to need to keep growing. So thank you, Jeffrey, as always.
Not everybody can do everything all the time.
This is so true. Thank you for tuning in to NOLA Matters, Islam in the Crescent City on WHIV LP New Orleans, your community radio station for social justice and human rights. This is Jenny Yanez. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon you.